Hello, everyone. How are we all? I've got Jake sat next to me. We're not 300 miles apart. We're both here for today's show.
Do you know what I just thought is, are we on the right side? Or did we not think this through?
Well, we're not on the right side.
We're not on the right side.
But we are on the right side.
It's weird, isn't it? I don't know how they do it with the, when they do the weather and they're all pointing on opposite sides of the thing.
But we've ended up that I am on the right
side, even though you're on the. But as we said, this is a bucket list adventure travel show first.
We're in the same room.
We're in the same room.
And the reason why we're in the same room is because all the bucket list team have come down to Devon for a couple of days, and this is why we're doing it later than normal. Normally we're on at lunchtime.
Yeah.
But you were driving to Devon.
Driving to Devon. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult, I think, to do the Facebook line. We did speak about it, but probably get into trouble for that. But yeah, we've got the whole team down, so we're going to do a couple of days team building, have some chats. Keith and I tend to meet once a year. That's normally about it for us. That's pretty good. I can't be doing inappropriate gestures to him beneath the table anymore. So
I mean, I'm already waiting. You've been here about 4 hours, and I'm already counting down the hours until you leave. But we're here. We thought we'd do this one together.
Yeah.
Just once in a year will be enough.
Yeah. No, all good. But we'll see if people like it. Tom, we see you're watching on Instagram. Let us know if anybody else, if you are watching, let us know where you're watching from. It'd be really good to hear from you.
Say hello in the comments, because it is always nice to know who's watching. I mean, I'm having to
it's really weird.
Normally I look at the screen.
Looking at the screen. Well, I'll say hello to my grandma, although it might be coming up to dinner time, so I don't know whether she is watching before.
Bedtime for my parents, so they're not going to be watching. But yeah, we thought we'd do this show together, and today's topic is
what trip you should do according to what activities you love. So we've got a range of different trips that we offer at the moment. So traditionally, we'd started out with all the hiking and the trekking trips, and I think that's what a lot of people still know us for. But because we branched out into doing a range of adventure travel destinations, and we want to spend a little bit of time talking about, depending on what activities you like, what trips you should do. And I have got a feeling that there's going to be a couple of trips out there that will surprise you based on which activities you like. You might not be expecting to do those activities on those trips or in those destinations. So it's a really good topic today. So hopefully everybody is all excited for it.
I'm ecstatic.
I know. Well, you've been like a kid at Christmas since yesterday, knowing that I was coming down. So the whole thing has been really exciting. So yeah, as we were saying, what trips should you do according to what activities you love? Well, I think the easiest one for us to start with is going to be our trekking trips. It's what we started with. It's what lots of our the people watching have been on. I've got some comments coming in on Instagram. Firstly, from the guys who that video was of in the Sahara. So we've got some messages coming through from our team in the Sahara Desert, saying hello and thank you very much. That was a great video. We were just talking about how good.
Yeah, I love that really video. Nice. And I think that's it. If we're going to start with trekking, we might as well start with the Sahara Desert trip then, because it's not a mountain climb. You don't spend ages walking uphill. And a lot of people who trek in the UK enjoy going out walking, want to do a trekking trip. Actually, it's a great starting trekking trip to go and do a multi-day trip. You get to go to Morocco, you get to see Marrakesh. And I just love the fact that you're not with other groups and you're not with other people. I mean, I don't like other people.
Says the owner of a group trekking.
I like our customers. I don't like other customers.
But I think actually that is one of the really nice things about doing the Sahara Desert. And we'll kind of talk about that in a bit more detail. But I have never seen another group when we've gone out and done the Sahara Desert because of the area that we go to. We've always had it really remote. It's always been our group. And there's something I love about that, because when you are camping in the desert and you see all the stars, you do feel very remote.
Yeah, I think when you get to the end of it, you tend to get a few of the 4x4s driving into the desert. But for the first 4 or 5 days, you don't. I mean, I've only ever seen one other person on that whole trip. That's not a local nomad person. I've only ever seen one other person. And if you haven't heard me talk about this story before, I'll quickly recount it now because it's a very funny story. But I had one of the ladies on the trip asked where she could go to the toilet. And I said, you're in the middle of the desert. You can go to the toilet wherever the hell you like. Let us walk past, find a bush and go and have a wee behind it. And she literally squatted behind this bush just as this Dutch man cycled down on his bike. And he was cycling across the whole of the Sahara Desert.
Amazing.
And I mean, you couldn't write it in terms of it doesn't happen, but when it does happen, you are squatting down having a wee. So.
Well, it's typical, isn't it? You won't see another person, and then at that exact moment, that is when you don't want to happen. We've got a question that's come in on Instagram from Pictures of Stones handle. It said, what's the typical age range of your groups?
So we did some research on this right at the start of the year, and we looked at across all of our trips. The average age of our trips this year was 44 years old across the average age. But I would say that spreads from 18-year-olds to 69-year-olds, but the average comes out at 44 as we did the research this year.
Actually, that was the spread that I had on my very last trip, was 18 to 69. So I think it is a really fair representation of the kind of people that we've got.
And I think it depends on, if you look at I mean, we looked at it across trips with gender, we looked at it at trips across age, and they were very trip specific. I mean, I did the Vietnam, Cambodia trip at the start of this year.
Yeah.
And I'm 44 and I was the youngest person on the trip. And then I've done other trips where I've been the oldest person on the trip. So it's completely dependent trip by trip. Same with gender. Like if you're climbing a really high mountain, the trips tend to be more male focused, I would say. But for like things like Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, I would say it's a complete mixed range. And you will get some people in their early 20s right up through, I would say.
Yeah, it's a brilliant mix. That was a great question. Thank you very much. If anybody else has any questions whilst they're watching this, then do feel free to pop those in the comment section, and we'll obviously go and answer them. Just don't ask me anything on percentages.
No, definitely don't ask.
The whole thing that if you listen to our podcast, which is coming out tomorrow. Okay, so a bit of shameless plugging. If you listen to the podcast that Keith and I recorded tomorrow, then you will see what we
recorded it last week. We don't do time travel. We recorded
tomorrow.
We've already recorded it. It comes out
tomorrow. Recorded it next week.
We've got a hi from Christina, one of our guides in Spain. Hi, Christina. Hope you're well. So we're talking. Tom's put a link to all of our different trekking trips into the groups there. So if you go into the comments, you can find a link to all the trekking trips we offer. And like I said, when we started out, we literally started the Bucket List Company with Mount Toubkal, Machu Picchu, Kilimanjaro, and Everest Base Camp. They were our four trips we started with. And also Gozo scuba diving, actually, which we'll come on to diving trips later. But they were our, the first 4 trips we ever launched were actually trekking trips with one diving trip. And they still, up until this day, remain our probably most popular best sold trips in terms of that, in terms of constant selling. Like they're the ones that we have the most dates to go on. They're the ones that are, we're selling more and more of, I would say. And I think if you want to do a mountain, and we've said this so many times before, then Toubkal is such a great starting point. And I had a phone conversation with somebody today, and they've done loads of independent travel and they want to get into group travel and they want to climb a mountain. And I just said to them, like, if you want to start, the best trip for you to even look at starting with is a Mount Toubkal climb.
Yeah, I think the Mount Toubkal, or I would maybe say if you were less confident on the mountains and you just wanted to experience some trekking, then the Sahara that we were just talking about are kind of those 2 brilliant starting points. I'd say they're very much introduction to trekking and an introduction to mountaineering trip. Marrakesh is really nearby. We've always said it's the biggest culture shock that you can get for the least amount of air miles.
I've said that. You just copied it.
We've said that. It's the biggest, but it's a fantastic starting point if you're looking at getting into international adventure travel, and you are looking at pursuing some trekking, some hiking. Toubkal, of course, you get to summit something, and that's a big selling factor for a lot of people. It's really appealing. Highest mountain in North Africa. So again, unless you look at doing Kilimanjaro, nothing else out there is going to be higher.
Highest mountain in the Arab world.
Is it really?
Yes.
Really? There we go.
You learn something new every day from me.
That's very good from you. And then the Sahara Desert, I would say, kind of, if you're just looking getting into multi-day hiking, then the Sahara Desert is definitely the one that you want to be looking at, because it is such an amazing trip. Obviously, as that video was showing at the beginning, it's a real variety of terrain. And I know that's the thing that a lot of people mistake when it comes to the Sahara Desert. It's
You
just
don't
gonna
trek
be a
in
lot of
sand.
It's going to be lots and lots of sand, but you spend minimal amount of time in the sand dunes. There's amazing pictures of that sunset coming in over the sand dunes.
And I think that's the highlight.
Really
if you go and speak to people who have done that trip, if you ask them the highlight of their trip, most people will say when you get to the highest sand dune in Morocco, where we camp just under it, and then we climb up and watch the sunset. If you ask most of our people what their highlight of the trip was, it is that moment.
Yeah, that was the highlight for me, especially. But everybody underestimates how amazing the rest of the trek is. And I think that's what always key takeaway is, that for a lot of people, their highlight is sitting on top of that sand dune. But the variety of terrain, getting to where the oasis is, going and experiencing a lot of the campsites, like all of that stuff. All that stuff is brilliant. So if you like your hiking and your trekking, if you enjoy doing that kind of thing in the UK, if you enjoy getting out to the mountains, all of that sort of stuff, then what we would say is, if you like those activities, get started by going across to Morocco and do a bit of an introduction into international trekking and mountaineering.
And I think also as well, like, the Sahara it's such a great trip, and that was really shown when it came up. We've just done the podcast. I did a podcast, you did a podcast, Dave did a podcast, all about our top trips, and the Sahara Desert trip was mentioned by all three of us in terms of how good a trip it is. And yeah, I think if you want to go walking, you don't want to walk up very big hills, then that is a great, if you're a hiker and you don't want to go to altitude, that is a great start. Obviously the next level then comes in at kind of Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, Annapurna Circuit Trek. You're then going to be gaining altitude. You're getting up now to the 5,000 meter mark. And they are on so many people's bucket lists. Like, everyone you talk to has either got a Kilimanjaro, an Everest Base Camp, or an Annapurna Circuit Trek on their bucket list. And, we do all of those as well. And, this episode could be a 3-hour episode in terms of if we went into detail in every trip. But, I think if you want to go in, summit something, that's when Kilimanjaro gets the tick. If you want to go and be trekking for days and days and days through amazing mountain scenery, then going to Nepal is definitely then high up on the list. And obviously then you go to the next level where you're then Mira Peaks and Aconcagua and things like that.
There's definitely a process, and we've done a few podcasts, and I believe we did live as well, kind of talking about, well, how do I progress from starting out in mountaineering and then moving forwards into that high altitude stuff. And I would definitely say start with something small like our Morocco trip. That's a fantastic place to start, and it's also budget friendly. Mountaineering and trekking can be a very, very expensive hobby to take up, especially when you start getting to your Mira Peaks, your Island Peaks, your Amadabloms. They become quite expensive. But you can get the experience of that at a very low cost by going to somewhere like Morocco. So I would definitely say there's a progression on there. You want to start in Morocco and then build your way up. Everest Base Camp and Kilimanjaro tend to be the next choices once you've done like a Toubkal. And then if you really love that high altitude experience, then you're pursuing it off into the Himalayas and a few other things. Machu Picchu also comes into as it's our background. I just saw like that does come into the trekking side of things. The Inca Trail, the Salcantay, like those are really good trips. If you're
and the podcast,
high.
Your mathematical podcast that comes out tomorrow is all about the Salcantay trek. Which is a really great one to listen to. I think Tom will put a link to the podcast there so you can check the podcast out. I think we're up to about 111 episodes now.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, so there's plenty of inspiration you can get there from the podcast as well. So
I didn't realize we had so much to say.
I
didn't realize you had so much to say.
I struggle sometimes, but it gets there.
So where would you say to people then is like, where is the best place to go then if you enjoy your diving? So, I mean, that's kind of like a natural then progression, I would say. If we've spoken briefly about the trekking and the hiking, and you enjoy more of the diving element, lots of people do, where would you suggest that? What trips?
Wow. I mean,
I actually don't know which way you're going to go with this, because I've got a feeling it's now between two. I would have
no,
confidently said one.
It's the Maldives.
Okay, yeah, I did. That was one of them.
Like, it's, you know, like, don't get me wrong, I've been going to Gozo for over 20 years now, and I love scuba diving in Gozo. But you know, you don't get to dive with sharks. You don't get to dive with turtles. You don't get to dive with massive rays. And if you want it as a bucket list tick, then I think definitely the Maldives is the place to go diving. If you want to learn to dive, I certainly wouldn't recommend going to the Maldives, because why would you want to spend your time learning to dive and spending all that money to go to the Maldives? And that's where our Gozo trip has always been so good. And it's this, it's pretty much the same as, before we moved on, I was going to say about the Tootcow trek. Like, you can book a Tootcow trek with us for £40 a month.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Like, and you can do pretty much the same. If you were to book a 2026 scuba diving trip to Gozo, it's pretty much the same amount a month. And, people always say, oh, I see all your photos, I see all this, and I'd love to do it, but I just can't afford to do it. And I just think, well, it's just about planning, isn't it? If you really want to do it, like £10 a week, you could go and, I know there's some people that can't afford £10 a week, don't get me wrong, but for the majority of people, if you really want to do something, you could go and do it if that was the one thing you focused on. If you stopped having your takeaway that week, if you stopped getting your Costa coffee 3 times a week, like, you could afford and pay to go to scuba diving.
Or for you to come up with the analogies of, like, stop having avocado on toast. That's what. But
I have never ever had avocado on toast.
You what?
No, I'm just a normal kind of guy.
Never had an avocado on toast?
No, I haven't.
Why? That's actually really thrown me that you would never have had an avocado. Do you know what an avocado is?
Yeah.
I've seen vegans. I'm in Devon, so I'm trying to tailor to my audience. We've just never been tempted to have it.
No,
ever.
No, if I want a breakfast, I'll have some bacon and some sausages. Like, that's
just vegetables in general. Just no.
Oh,
is it a vegetable? I think it's a vegetable. Is it?
I'm not.
Oh, there you go. I'll have it's a fruit. Anyway, what was I going to say based on that? Gozo is the perfect training ground.
Yeah.
I think what we're saying, and something that you said to me was, there is no point going to these incredible destinations and spending time having to, like, do all your theory and learn all your stuff, and maybe even be in a swimming pool and stuff like that. Gozo actually provides.
But it's not only that, though. It's the fact that, when you are doing a scuba course, you spend most of your time in 5 meters worth of, confined water is what you do for a scuba course. You've got to get a couple of your dives in at depth, but for the majority of it, you are spent in what they would class as confined water. And if I want to go to the Maldives, I don't want to be sat in 3-4 meters worth of water on my knees, learning to take my mask off. Like, I want to be out seeing things and doing things. So,
brilliant. Well, we've got some comments coming in, so I'm just keen to address those. I really appreciate everybody commenting in with all your questions and your comments. So, lots of people saying hiking makes them happy. Hiking is what they want to be doing. So, a lot of support on the hiking trips. Plenty of hiking trails in the Himalayas and India. Well, we do have an India Himalaya adventure, which I went on earlier this year. And actually, I'm quite keen to talk about that in a minute, because I think that's actually got some activities on there that you wouldn't necessarily expect to get in one trip. And, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, we'll go into that in a minute. I got a really nice comment from Lee on Instagram. I'm in New Zealand and you are my choice for a hiking business. Your trips look amazing.
There we go. Look at that.
There we go. Thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, trips are amazing. So lots and lots of people are commenting in with that. So thank you very, very much. But
if I just go back to diving, go to the Maldives.
That's your one takeaway from this episode.
Is Keith loves the Maldives. So we launched the Real Maldives trip, and that we did our first trip this summer on our Real Maldives trip, and everyone who went on it thoroughly enjoyed it. It was amazing. And then obviously it's not a scuba diving trip. I wanted to create that trip so it wasn't scuba diving based, because ultimately not everyone scuba dives, not everyone can scuba dive, but I wanted people to go and experience the real Maldives and stay on local islands and do all that. But while I was there, I suddenly realized that I needed to spend more time in the Maldives because it was just my calling as just someone that diving.
That was your calling.
That was my calling in life, to spend more time in the Maldives. So I chartered a liveaboard boat, and decided that I could probably find enough of our bucket listers who wanted to join me on a liveaboard experience. So we've launched a liveaboard trip for 2026, and we've sold 13 of the 16 places on that one already. So if you are already a scuba diver, and you want to come and join us on our Maldives liveaboard trip, then I'm going to ask Tom, who actually for once is also sat in the same room as me and Jake. It's very convenient. There's no delay or anything. It happens like instantly as I'm speaking. And he will put up a link to that trip as well. And I'm so looking forward to that trip because the boat is amazing. And we've got an extension on that one as well, where we're going to go and stay in Reethy Beach, which is an amazing independent island resort, which is not like your typical Maldivian resort. It is just so lovely. And actually, I've even got 2 people who were on the real Maldives trip with me this summer have also booked onto the liveaboard trip, and I'm sure Andrea's probably watching because she's normally watching. She's normally on Facebook though, not on Instagram, to be fair. So
we have got a few people watching that I'll give a shout out to in a minute.
And so they've booked that one again, and they've also booked the Reethy Beach extension. So if you want to extend the liveaboard trip on that one, we're doing an extension to go to Reethy Beach. And if you want to get more diving done, you can do more diving, which I will probably do. And if you want to just sit on the beach and enjoy the Maldivian sunshine, then you can do that as well. And that's one trip that I am super looking forward to in 2026.
It's just a real shame that something bad's going to happen to your passport just before you go, and I'll have to step in. So
because I do
feel
I have 2 passports for that exact reason.
So I'm going to give a couple of shout outs. Gareth Davies, who is watching, you have asked actually, would we consider a hiking trip to Norway? I know it's something that we have spoken about, so watch this space. Do let us know kind of what particularly interests you and what destinations. And a lot of these trips that we launched and we have stemmed from people saying, would you consider doing this? Like, have you ever thought about doing this? So if lots of people are talking about the same places,
I'm going to put a teaser out now because I am actually working on a new trip now. Okay. And you don't even know about this.
This is how good our communication is.
Well, what do you mean? I'm telling you now.
That's brilliant.
But I am working on a new trip now for a trekking trip to Bhutan. Okay. And that will be, I think, our next launch. I think might be the trekking trip to Bhutan. So if anyone wants to go trekking in Bhutan,
okay, if you want to go trekking in Bhutan, can you comment Bhutan underneath, and then we'll do a little tally. I'll get Tom to work out the percentage, not me, and then we'll do. Shout out to Sharon Avery, who is watching. She's watching on Instagram. So hello, Sharon. And Ellie Pinnock is watching from the bar.
Is she from the bar?
So
yeah, we've got all my staff team are sat in my bar at the minute in my garden, whilst we are sat here still working.
Well, some of us are hard workers, and we like to lead by example. So,
unfortunately for Tom, he's had to come in as well.
Yeah, I know. And then Tom's in. Sharon said hi, so that's really nice. Lovely to see all of you guys watching this evening.
I was trying to get Sharon to come on the liveaboard trip, and then she nearly booked it, and then when Kev's just reminded me I get sick every time I step on a boat, so really not one for me to go on.
Okay, well, as much as we would love everybody to be able to experience diving, and it is something that I believe that everybody should try, and it should be on all of your bucket lists. If you get really, really seasick when you step on a boat, then we won't pressure you.
But go to Gozo because there's no boats.
But go to Gozo. I suppose
Bozo.
Go.
Where's Bozo?
I was getting Bhutan still on the brain. If we are going on the topic of boats, what are some other activities that you can do if you like being on the water that revolve around boats, Keith?
Well, obviously, there's my trip of Oh, Andrea's just come on. We've just
Andrea's
mentioned
sure,
you,
yeah, we
Andrea.
have.
We've just been talking about you and you've missed it.
Well, yeah, I like this. I've missed some of the live tonight. I was busy doing dinner. What are you having, Andrea?
Yeah. Anything nice? And you're only down the road. You could pop
Yeah,
on.
I did think that she's only down the road. So go on. What's your
Whitewater rafting?
whitewater rafting?
Yeah.
Is your trip now? Where does the whitewater rafting happen?
Well, there's several trips you can do with whitewater rafting, but the actual specific whitewater rafting one takes place in Morocco again.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people don't think that Morocco is a whitewater rafting destination when you bear in mind that you've got the Sahara Desert and everything else.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrea, I only know Singapore for one thing, and that's Singapore slings.
Yeah, not
not noodles.
Singapore noodles.
But the trouble is, we're talking about that, and people on Instagram don't see the comments on Facebook. So
no, that's why I was talking. I was mentioning it. I'm hoping that if you are watching, it's all being connected. You don't all have to send in what you're having for dinner. It's not. You don't.
But the whitewater rafting trip, yeah, I really, it's again, it didn't make my top 5/6 trips.
See, I was really surprised about that because the way. Like how excited you were when you came back and the pictures and the stories. I mean, it is an incredible trip, but there's such fierce competition for taking top 5. I mean, when Keith gave me the task, I said, "Oh, well, I'd love to do a podcast with you. I've done one with Dave, and we've spoken about our top 5." He said, "So can you come with 5?" And I really struggled to pick 5. And then I got there and I found out that you'd done 6.
Yeah, but
you got away with 6.
It's my podcast. I can do what I like. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because like, since you've come on board, you've created some trips.
Yeah.
But the majority of the trips, Tom Lloyd, love to trek on Antarctic. Tom, you know it's coming. You're just like, you're just teasing me. He's reminding me that
he's going, come on, chop,
got to do some more work. And just going on what I was saying, a lot of the trips that are on our schedule are trips that I have put together. Some of them are obviously the classics that I didn't really think them up because they already I didn't create Everest Base Camp or
use an example.
And I didn't even create the whitewater rafting one down the River Hansel in Morocco, but nobody else really does it, and it's just such an amazing trip. And the thing I love about it is the fact that it's generally end of March, April, early May style trip. So it's a nice time to get away. It's a really short trip because it's only a 6-day trip. You can do it easily within 7 days worth of holiday. And the scenery is, you'd think you're in the Grand Canyon in America. Like people don't get to, and again,
it looked incredible.
You don't see anybody else. You don't see any other people doing it. It's a relatively cheap trip. I know our chips aren't, we're not going to Butlins, but like in terms of I mean, it's expensive to go to Butlins now. If you look at that, but in terms of an Easter Island trip or something like that, it is a relatively cheap trip, I think. And you can do add-ons, and you can go to Essaouira, and you can make it a longer trip if you want to. And
when we're talking about the types of trips, depending on what activities you like, because there is so much variety of things that you can do in Morocco, it does make it a really good destination for doing a lot of trips. I'm going to give a shout out to Andy Mitchell.
Oh, hello, Andy.
Andy's watching. You're Instagram famous, Andy. You're Instagram famous. That's what. He was saying, I think Sharon Avery says Bhutan sounds interesting. Another one to add to the list. That list
there we go.
Is getting longer. Whilst we're talking about whitewater rafting, and it's potentially a destination that you might not associate with whitewater rafting.
Croatia.
Oh no, that's really good. But that's not what I was going to say.
I don't
get me started on Croatia. I'm going to go off. India. I'm going to talk about India.
I knew that's where you're going.
No, that's
why I would stop you.
You can't now because Croatia is also really good, and then you get all the jumping off the cliffs, and you get anyway. I'm going to go with India because India was such a fantastic destination for having such a variety of different activities. So,
did you see a tiger?
I did see a tiger.
Did you? You mentioned it.
I mentioned it. I got to see a tiger, and you didn't. So, no. So that you get to do zip lining, you get to do whitewater rafting, you get to do a little bit of trekking, you get to do sightseeing. So in my opinion, it is one of the best kind of combination trips where you get to do a multitude of activities, and kind of really feeding it back into line with what the title of the live is if you enjoy doing any of those activities, look at some of our multi-activity trips. Croatia is one of them. Another one that I would honestly, you would be interested in.
Costa Rica,
Yeah,
Brazil, like any of the best of, you know, you look at any of the, you know, Thailand.
But I was going to say also Chile and Easter Island. I was going to class as being a bit of a multi-activity trip.
Yeah, some cycling in there. There's some trekking in there. There's a lot of cultural kind of stuff in there. Patagonia, we didn't even mention, is a trekking destination.
No, Patagonia. I suppose the one that really does encompass the most amount of variety, well, not the most amount of variety, but a lot of variety for a short space of time, and really, really, really budget friendly, would be Spain.
Yeah, I mean that's the most multi activities,
because there's so much that you get to do.
Yeah, and actually there's very few spaces left on that one again, and that was always a surprise for me, because when we launched, I remember coming up with the Spain concept. I remember thinking, I would love to do, like, I've been again going to Spain for the last 20 years climbing.
I thought you were just saying you came up with Spain.
As a destination. Yeah, climbing in Spain was all my idea. No, but as a bucket list trip.
As a bucket list trip.
And I remember, like, we've got a bucket listers Facebook group. So for any of our customers, once they've signed up to a trip, they go into the bucket listers Facebook group.
Yeah.
And I remember putting a post in the Facebook group and saying, here's an idea for a trip. I'm going to rent this villa out with its own pool, and we're going to do some multi-activity. And I remember, like, it went mad. Yeah, I'd be up for that. Everyone was tagging their mates in it, and I was like, well, we need to launch this trip. This is literally
and probably like 2 or 3
four signed up for it. And I remember, like, I planned to go out there with, it was me, Dave, and obviously Chris is already in Spain, so we Chris was going to join us as well. So there was 3 guides and 4 clients, and I was like, we cannot run this. Like, this is ridiculous.
I remember you coming back from it.
And I sat down and spoke with Dave, and we were just like, what are we going to do about this? And he was like, well, A, you've paid for the villa, so you've lost that. You either refund everyone the money, or we just go out and have a really lovely time.
Really good time, yeah.
And as like I am, I was like, well, let's just go and have a really lovely time then. So we went out there, and we had the best week. Like, we did sea kayaking, we did climbing, we did via ferrata, we did the downhill bike ride, and then we climbed the Puig, which is higher than any mountain in the UK, which literally, when you sit there having your coffee in the morning in the villa, you look up at it. And of course, what always happens is people start posting photos and saying, oh, this is amazing. Like, I'd come back and do this again.
Yeah.
And like 3 of the guys that were on the trip then went and booked and said, are you doing this next year? And I was like, well, probably not, because I'm not going to do it again for 4 people. And they were like, well, we would book on it again. And I know so-and-so who will book on it. And I know someone who will book on it. So we did launch it again. And this year, I think we had like 19 people on it. And it was just the best week. Everyone had a lovely time. We didn't do the sea kayaking this year because we had 3 people on it last year that had done sea kayaking. We switched that out to canyoning. So they did a different activity. So it wasn't a complete repeat of the same week, and they just had such an amazing time. And again, next year I think it's already got 12-13 people on it. I think there's 3 or 4 spaces left on that one.
It's becoming more
and even popular. People are booking that one for 2026 as well already. It's like, and again, it's our cheapest trip.
It is the cheapest
it's our cheapest trip we do. The lovely thing about Spain is you can probably fly from we don't do flights for that one, because every you have to land into Alicante airport, and every local airport flies into Alicante. So save yourselves getting yourself to London or wherever. If you live in the north, if you live in the south, if you live in the southwest, like, you can literally, I'll fly from Exeter, like, because it means I can get there really quickly. But it's super easy to get to, and it's so lovely to have the villa for our clients, and it be you really feel like it's a bucket list trip because it's your villa. It's got a swimming pool. It's got a bar. Like, what more can you want?
Bar.
Yeah, and you know, and Sharon Avery was on it this year.
Yeah, Sharon's been on it, and we're saying, well, when we were in Salcantay, how much of an amazing time she had, and we definitely book on it again. So I think that is the other thing. Like, even though
I think you can repeat that. You can repeat
well, that's
that
what I was going to say. Like most of the trips that we do, we kind of say, well, you go and you see the best that it has to offer, and then because there's lots of places that people want to go to, then you would work and go on the other ones, whatever. But Spain is just one where people are almost considering just booking onto it as an annual holiday and catching up with people that they haven't seen for ages, who have been on other trips. It's a bit of a reunion.
It's and that was always the original plan for it. When we originally launched it, it was only ever going to be launched to bucket listers as a reunion trip. And then when we put it out, I think most people last year were existing clients who were on there. There was a few who it was their first trip, but the majority were people who had done a bucket list trip beforehand. And then one of the girls who was on that trip, that was her first ever bucket list trip, Vicky. And I think she's booked 2 or 3 other trips now since she's come back, because she just kind of found that she met these amazing people who were her tribe and they were her sorts of people, and she wants to go out and do more.
Well, I think if you are on your own in a sense, or kind of, you know, by coming onto the trip, like, you very quickly meet a really nice group of people. So don't worry about this being, because it was supposed to be a bit of a reunion, that it was going to be open to existing bucket list customers, and it was a way for people to catch up and see all the people they meet on their trips. And actually, we just found that
I had to sell the villa. That's why we opened it up to around. I couldn't have it another game where we didn't.
Well, like, so Sharon has just confirmed for everybody watching. So yes, it was great. Plus, Keith and Dave even cooked one night, so she remembers that.
I cooked 2 nights. Thanks very much.
Well, that's not what Sharon said. So
well, I think you better go back and look through her photos, because I cooked 2 nights on that trip. But yeah, it's a great trip, really easy. And again, like, you book for 2026, it's peanuts in terms of what it will cost you to go on that one. And we'll always mix up the activities, and hopefully, Sharon, we'll see you on that one again another time, because I know Kev loved the Via Ferrata so much.
Excellent. So I suppose then, are there any other activities that you can think of that?
Well, there's one that I can think of
interested in,
where I had to lend you a pair of shorts.
Yes. I'm trying to think really hard of what that might be, because you lend me so many pairs.
No, I don't.
No. So that one was our cycle adventure. So if you are interested in cycling, if you are a keen cyclist or a amateur cyclist, or just fancy having a go,
I wouldn't say fancy having a go. It's 320 kilometers. You don't go in fancy having a go.
You can fancy it, have a go, because as I found out based on what I did. So we did launch a Tanzanian cycle adventure, and it is actually, and I didn't make it into my top 5, a little bit like Gozo, but I actually
Gozo made it into yours.
Gozo made it into mine.
Whitewater rafting didn't make it into mine.
Did Gozo make it into yours?
No, Maldives did.
No, right. Okay, so it was a really tough one, because I actually really loved the Tanzanian cycle, and I've got so many incredible pictures from that, and you get to get so much closer to the wildlife. But kind of giving you an overview, it is 360 kilometers through the 3 national parks in Tanzania.
What are they called?
You have, I know this one, you have, I don't necessarily know them in the order, but Lake Manyara, the Tarangire, and the Ngorongoro crater. And that is the order, actually.
It is the order.
Yeah. Because I remember every painstakingly saddle sore mile of that trip, so I had enough time.
I'd just like to point out that I didn't ask for the shorts back either after at the end of it.
I'm still offering. I'm not like stolen.
But you won't wash them, have you?
So I went ahead. We did the Tanzanian cycle adventure. Absolutely fantastic. So I would say, yes, you do need to know how to ride a bike, obviously. I
think you'd be a keen cyclist. Like, you need to have a real
I would say you need to be a keen cyclist. You need to know that you enjoy cycling. Be aware that it is going to be warm and hot. You are cycling through Tanzania, so during the days you want lots of sun cream.
And you're on the equator, so it doesn't really change either, does it?
No, it's not like there's a season that's way better than another. But you pretty much predominantly stay in kind of accommodation that has, you've got access to showers, so you shower every night. It's not like roughing it and camping it. Yeah. Well, you had the choice.
Okay.
So you get the ability to go and kind of shower every evening, and there's a couple of places where they've got like bars and restaurants. There's swimming pools. Yeah, it's amazing. So I really love that trip. So if you like cycling, I would definitely look into. And I would
say as well, it's a supported cycle, isn't it? So you've got a vehicle going behind you. If you feel tired, you can put your bike on the trailer.
Yeah,
you can get in the vehicle and have a couple hours off.
And the vehicle's got the vehicle's got a driver. It's got a mechanic.
Really, it's got a driver in the vehicle. That's really good.
Finish. You got the driver who also doubles up as the mechanic,
right?
And then you've got two guys who are also there to kind of help support with the cycling themselves. And then you've got another guy who goes ahead with the Jeep and basically sets up everything for when you come and take a break. So you always know that it's getting close to when you would take a break, because the Jeep disappears, and then as you're approaching it in, like, let's say 20 minutes time, they've set up this table under normally these patches of trees, and they've got Coca-Cola's laid out, they've got your lunches, your snacks, all that sort of stuff. So it's brilliant. It's really well supported, and as I said at the beginning, you do get closer to the animals, in my opinion, than you would if you're in a Jeep, because you're making less noise and all that sort of stuff.
I think that's the biggest surprise on that trip, isn't it? Is like you're just cycling along, and next minute some giraffes walk across, or some zebras walk across the road, and you're just like, what am I doing? Like, I don't get this cycling.
Yeah, and if you're a little bit tired, then they point out the lion. And just like, what is it? Some days you have to find motivation, other days motivation finds you.
And that's always my thing with things. Actually, I'm just not the slowest. As long as you're not the slowest, it's not a problem.
As long as you're not the slowest.
Yeah.
They do have electric bikes as well. So if you were interested in coming out and doing that trip, then you can go and get an electric bike.
You can pay the extra supplement.
Pay the extra. It's more expensive, but you can go and pay for the electric bike.
I think that's what I might do. And I'm just looking down through our website, looking at our categories, and there's only one that we've missed out so far, and that's wildlife holidays.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting really good at wildlife holidays.
You are getting really good. You've got your big binoculars, your massive camera.
I've got my massive lens.
I was thinking about that, but no. You've got the.
But for me, like a Tanzanian safari is just amazing. And next year, I mean, we only do really two. Well, no, we don't, because we do the Chitwan Safari add-on. So you can pretty much do that on any of our Nepal trips. Best of Nepal has a trip to the Chitwan. Not that I've ever seen a tiger at Chitwan. That's always a bugbear of mine.
I've seen a tiger.
Yeah, I know you've seen a tiger.
I'll describe it to you later.
I've seen the photos. I don't need to see it again. And then next year, I am leading our first gorilla trekking trip to Uganda. And I don't know if Lindsay's watching, because she hasn't said hello, and normally Lindsay will say hello.
Yes, yeah.
But this trip was pretty much set up for Lindsay, and I've been wanting to do a gorilla trekking trip, but I'm a very busy guy, and it takes time to put a trip together. And I remember getting the WhatsApp from Lindsay saying, if you don't put a gorilla trekking trip on for my 50th birthday, I'm going to book with another company.
Well, yeah.
And that's just like, that really annoys me when someone says that. So I quickly put a gorilla trekking trip on to Uganda. And again, it sold out really nicely. And we are heading out for our first one in February. And I'm leading that one with my big lens. And hopefully we're going to see some gorillas.
Well, hopefully. I mean, the only kind of thing that, obviously, before discussing that trip with you, that I knew about gorilla trekking in Uganda, the only experience I vaguely had was by watching Carl Pilkington on An Idiot Abroad go gorilla trekking, and now that is what I've got in my head for when you go out.
You said that, Lindsay?
Absolutely outrageous. Nothing of the sort. Tom Lloyd says if you don't book Antarctica, he's going to book it with other companies.
Tom, it's in the pipeline. Let me get I'm running two at the same time. I've got Bhutan and Antarctica. So I'm literally getting.
People are commenting in saying Bhutan. Sharon's come back and said Bhutan as well.
So I mean, Tom, let's see. I'll launch whichever one has the most. So if you want Bhutan, put Bhutan. If you want Antarctica, put Antarctica. Whichever one gets the most in there, I'll launch first. So. But yeah, again, Antarctica, I'm super looking forward to. It's been on my bucket list for a long time, just like so many trips have been. And Chile and Easter Island originally was one that was on my bucket list. So we created a trip to Chile and Easter Island, like gorilla trekking. And we're not just gorilla trekking. There's a safari in there as well. There's chimpanzees in there. Lucille, Antarctica. We've got 1 vote for Antarctica. Tom, you're all right on Facebook?
Andy Mitchell has come in, and classic Andy Mitchell, not quite listening to the instructions. He's come back saying Canada.
It's very far away from Bhutan, Antarctica.
Oh, Bhutan. But that is somewhere that we.
And we had this. I had this conversation. I was at the Destinations show in when was that? February? Destinations in London, and lots of people came onto the stand and spoke about Canada. And the problem with Canada is
what are you about to say?
This is not about
the audience is going down quite far these days. The live.
No, but the problem with Canada is it's the same as Australia. People have lots of different things on their bucket list when you say, I want to go to Canada, I want to go to Australia. And if you put a trip together, how are you going to fit all of those? Canada's a big place.
Yeah.
How are you going to fit all of those bucket list ticks?
It's definitely a multiple trip destination.
Yeah,
I would say. I don't think you can see everything or the best of Canada. I don't think we could do a best.
You couldn't
of Canada.
It's like the best of Australia, isn't it? It'd be a 3-year trip, and
we could do it.
When we could send you, yeah, that would be all right.
Bags packed. it's there.
So we've got another vote for Antarctica from Andrea.
I have got some votes coming in. Sharon's commented in saying Kev says Bhutan and definitely the Spanish adventure again. She's also come out. This one at the bottom.
Japan.
We've looked at it.
Japan's really difficult at the minute.
Really hard.
Japan is just being. If you ever think of the word over tourism, that is currently what's happening in Japan. And to try and get hotel rooms and stuff in Japan, and to try and find an operator in Japan, is just really, really hard, because it is at the minute that since after COVID, it's been great for Japan. But at the same time, though, we've got over tourism, and it's really hard. And it's one that we've got. We've tried to plan Japan, and it will happen eventually. But I think we just need to just give it a little bit. We've got some great We've got some great destinations coming.
Oh, we're not short on places, and that's the thing. We jump on these lives every week, and we chat with people on the trips, and that's it. Like, the list for us is growing just as much as it is for everybody else, and that's really nice. Like, I can't wait to see where it is in the next 10 years with all the places that we suddenly launched that I hadn't even really thought of now. Like, I think that's how it does keep growing.
Like South Molton.
South Molton should be on everyone's bucket list, but maybe not for the reasons.
The best of South Molton. I can see it happening now.
Fantastic. So is that it? Have we gone through basically?
I think we've gone through all of our trip categories. So we've got cycling holidays, which we haven't got many.
No.
I would say we are not a cycling specialist.
You get to do cycling on a variety of different trips, but the only cycling trip specific one is
the Ngorongoro, or the best of
the kind of
the Ngorongoro crater.
Cycle.
And then we've got our mountain climbing holidays, which is our Mira Peaks, our Island Peaks, our Kilimanjaro. Like, we could do an episode on each one of these categories, really. Then we've got our multi-adventure holidays, which are
all of our best ofs
pretty much. Adventure Spain, Croatia, all of those style trips. Then we've got our wildlife holidays, which are the safari, gorilla trekking, but obviously also you can add a Tanzanian safari onto.
So the add-ons and a Chitwan
safari, and also the Galapagos as well. If you love wildlife, if you're going to Peru, then that would be. And Ecuador is another trip that we really want to be looking at launching.
And actually, with
Galapagos,
I would say similar to the best ofs, we've got the Amazon and Pantanal adventure in Brazil. And if you like your wildlife, and if you've heard of the Okavango Delta, it's Brazil's equivalent. So lots and lots of people are now looking at exploring the Pantanal in Brazil, because that is just such a popular wildlife destination.
And then we've got our trekking and hiking holidays, which is what we started off doing. So our Machu Picchu's, our Sahara Desert treks. So they're all there as well. But hopefully that's given you a little bit of inspiration. I can't believe we managed to do 51 minutes of that. We normally struggle with 22 minutes, but we somehow, when you're sat next to me and I can take the mickey out of you really easily, we get to 51 minutes of time.
Yeah, see, I've definitely noticed, because I can't mute you like I normally would when you're talking on a live. Like I can just mute that bit. But it's been really interesting hearing everything you've had to say today. Actually, it's been quite good.
Actually managed to listen. I'd be really interested if people could comment about whether or not they prefer Jake and me stood next to or sat next to each other like a bit of an ant in deck on screen, or whether you prefer us 372 miles away from each other. That'd be interesting.
I know which I prefer. So if I get a vote.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, you know, I could just make you drive down every Tuesday. If we get more people saying they prefer you sat next to me, then obviously we need to do what,
in some twisted way, how everybody is now going to comment in and make me drive hundreds of miles every Tuesday and back again, just for fun.
Yeah, because you can't stay till Wednesday.
No. Well, I think we have successfully covered off everything. I'm really appreciative for everybody who has stayed on and watched. I know that it's a little bit later than it normally is.
And actually, that'd be an interesting one to see what people actually think about the later start time.
Yeah.
Like, would you rather us do it in the evening?
Yeah.
Or just comment evening or lunchtime, just so we can see what.
I'll tell you what, we will. Yeah, let's give it a minute. Everybody comment in right now what you prefer, lunchtime or evening. And we will definitely kind of look at which one works better, because it has been nice to be able to kind of discuss it when we know that people aren't cramming it into a lunch break and trying to do all that sort of stuff.
I think we've got, you know, there are people who can't watch the lives at lunchtime because they've got jobs, and there are Tom Lloyd who watches at lunchtime.
Yeah. So we've had one vote in for evening. Okay. I don't know if that's supposed to be another vote for evening. I can't quite.
Misses.
Not sure whether you're trying to spell evening. Evening, not in working hours.
Might have to extend our working day. Looking at that.
No, it's good. Well, it's been really nice, actually. One of the things that I've really enjoyed is being able to talk to all of you a little bit more and having those comments coming backwards and forwards, because it does make it a much nicer experience. And if you guys have got the time to be able to do that in the evenings, then I just feel like you can ask more questions. So that's been really nice. Okay, well, definitely comments coming through for the evening time at the moment. So I think that might be a decided one. We'll see what comes in over the next little bit, but.
Yeah, I think that's it. But if you want to comment even after, because the comments still stay and we can still go back and check out what people say. So, and I think what I'm going to leave you with is, as we started with a trekking orientated video of the Sahara, I think we'll finish with a safari video to finish with.
Well, that just gives Keith an excuse to show me his massive lens later. So everybody. So are
you going home tonight again, or are you
the cameras for the safari? Because you got some great pictures.
Yeah, lovely. Right, I'm off.
All right,
Speak to you later.
Bye
bye.